I got a question, Mr. Steppler. How do you pronounce your first name correctly?
My first name, you say it Ian.
Ian. Okay.
Yeah.
We was all arguing about that the other night. We couldn't figure out if we did it all right. But thank you.
I want to welcome everybody here to the Bee Chat tonight. Our guest speaker is Ian Steppler, the Canadian beekeeper. He has a YouTube channel. You guys can check him out at Canadian Beekeeper on YouTube. And we're going to ask him a few questions, like a little bit like a podcast first, and then we're going to open it up to questions. How'd you get started into beekeeping, Ian?
How did I get started? Well, I've been in the business for about 20 years now. Probably, I'd say more so commercial-like in the last 17 or 15 years. But I graduated from high school and went to the University of Manitoba, and I took my Diploma of Agriculture. And it just happened to, I needed a couple of credits to pass the course, and just happened to have this beginner's beekeeping course offered. And I kind of laughed at it actually off the start. But my buddy and I were in the same kind of situation. We both needed 2 credits. And so we took the course, and I bought 4 hives after that, and just kind of stumbled and fumbled my way into where I am now.
Once you get bit by the bee bug, it's hard to get away.
It certainly, that's for sure.
Yeah. I know you're big into the nutrition of honeybees, and not too many people in the world's addressing it. Are you getting anywhere on getting, so somebody can tell us what we need to feed our bees?
As far as nutrition, I can talk a lot about that. Where do you want me to start?
Well, when you're feeding cattle or anything like that, you take a blood sample and they come out there and tell you what you need to feed your cow. There's nothing like that going on in the honeybees as far as I know of.
No, I agree with you too. There's not a lot that we really know about nutrition and kind of the requirements of the bees. Well, we know what the bees need. But, I go out to that cattle farm and, I take a sample of feed and I take it to our farm nutritionist, and he figures out all these numbers, and he comes back to us and he says, this is what you got to target for your cattle herd. This is what the production you're going to target, and this is what you got to feed them, and this is what you're going to get, And there doesn't seem to be that kind of attention towards the bees. But I think the more that I think about it, bees are such a natural animal, right? And they're collecting the resources from around them in the area. And the development within their colonies is, reflective to exactly what's going outside of that hive. And that's extremely important. And for all the time I've been pissing around trying to figure out how to feed my bees better, I keep coming back to the same conclusion that we just need more flowers out there. Like, bees do absolutely fantastic on pollen coming in. They bring in that diversity of pollen, and I talk to conservation groups and municipalities and farmers and everything. We need more flowers in our ditches. And I keep telling them, my messaging is, we need those flowers to be able to bring in that natural nutrition. I tell them, even if we have just a little bit, because there's that is it almost like a factor X out there that we can't replace and substitute, right? And we tell them, we just need a little bit out there. If you can just farm the land a little bit differently or provide us the edges, just bring in that natural nutrition, then I can bulk up the rest of it with supplements. But we can't do it without that pollen, right? So everything revolves around that pollen. And then my strategy basically is just to provide I don't have small hive beetle up here. I don't know if you have, do you have it down there, Joe?
Yeah, I have them pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a different approach that you'll probably take than I do. But in the spring, what I do is I provide them with patties on the colonies, and I just give them supplement throughout the entire spring. So I don't have to worry about small hive beetle coming in and invading and anything like that. But our weather is so variable up here that, the hives will get going out of winter. We'll, kind of jolt them with some protein right before the pollen starts, get that queen laying. Natural stuff comes in, they'll ignore that, the supplement I put out for them. But I keep it on there even though they're not paying attention to it, because we have weather systems that come through here that completely shut down foraging for like, it could be like a week on end. So I make sure to have that supplement on there just to keep them from falling into protein stress, protein deficiency, you know what I mean? And just keep that colony just an incline build all the way through the season. And I do that right, you know, I put the patties on right at the beginning of spring. I feed right through that early spring pollen. We get into May where we get heavier spring pollen, and there's so much pollen coming in, they're not paying as much attention to that patty. But I still have it there because we'll get storms to drop on us within days, and when that happens, they're right up and they're consuming that patty. And just I think it just helps them continue on their, you know, their massive brood expansion within the spring. And then in the fall too, I find that as these colonies are setting up their nests for winter, I think it's extremely important that we make sure that they have the nutrition they need to be able to develop out these nests. Like, you need the pollen coming in, but you know, when I strip off the boxes, I'm putting on 3-4 pounds of protein. That's middle of August, right when they're developing those winter nests out up here, and they consume that. And I think that just helps them develop a better winter nest, right? Just fatten the bees out. And that's basically what I do. Yeah. I've been kind of screwing around some guy out east just on a supplement that we've been talking back and forth, and we're making up something, and it's got a little bit of spark to it. I'm really excited about it. We're going to try it out this spring, but that's about the extent I have about supplements.
Yeah. Yeah, we was talking here when you were on the other night. We was talking about feeding sucrose versus fructose, and you said you feed fructose in the spring because they take it down better. You mean they just come to it better and to consume it?
Well, I just think they recognize it as more of a maybe they recognize it better than you do sucrose. It seems like you put fructose out and sucrose at the same time, it takes them a while to get on the sucrose. For the fructose, they're on it just like that. So I think they recognize it different, and they hold it in their systems, and I don't believe that they will store it the same way. And by holding on to it more, I feel that I just get a tremendous amount more wax production out of my spring colonies when I'm feeding them that fructose.
Okay.
But I'm very careful. I used to feed corn syrup too in the fall to put them through winter. Like, we manage our nests in single boxes, right? So we pretty much take all the honey crop away from them. And we do that mostly because we want to take the honey to sell, but we want to keep as much of that canola honey out of the nest as we can, because it hardens up like cement. So then, you know, in the fall, we're stripping off this honey. They pack that bottom box right full of brood. So we have to be pretty quick with them on sugars to make sure they keep going. And then we got to provide them all that sugar to backfill for winter. And I used to feed corn syrup for that, and I switched to sucrose. And the reason why I did that is because I found that the corn syrup was, like, my bees are indoors for 5 months confined, right? And we just feel that maybe the corn syrup doesn't, they don't seem to winter as well on it. They seem to get later on in winter, not this time of year, but pushing into March, the bees will start to get really poopy on the front entrances. And a lot of guys were blaming that on nosema, but there's not nosema. I think it's just that the bees aren't utilizing that corn syrup the same way. And as soon as I switched over to sucrose, my entire shed cleaned right up. So I pay more for sucrose, but I think the bees winter better on it. They seem to store it away, and I don't know. I won't go back to winter feed to feeding fructose.
Ooh. Your fructose you're feeding, is that 55, what they call 55?
Yeah, we cut it 10%. Yeah.
Cut it. That's what I was going to next question. How much you cut it? Cut it 10%.
Yeah, it makes it easier to feed that way. Just thins it out a bit.
Yeah, 55 is pretty thick.
Yeah.
Pretty thick. Okay.
Better delivered that way, though. It doesn't cost as much to deliver thicker syrup, though.
Yeah, no sense paying for water. I understand that. Can we give a little recognition to all the guys that's on here that's regulars? Hey, you got Jamie Kelsey, Fort Mountain Bees. He's in Alabama. Down there, you get a hold of Jamie if you guys need some bee. And Jason Bragg's New River Honeybees in West Virginia. Langford Parton, Woolly Bees Apiaries in Jasper, Tennessee. Who else selling bees? Mike Privet, he's in Hobart, Tennessee. Todd Prince, North Carolina, Queens. He's in North Carolina, NC Queens. And that's all of it. I'm going to open it up to questions to everybody. I think that I told you last week that it was wrong. You click on manage on participants, and then when you do that, there'll be an area over there that you can raise your hand and ask a question, and I'll try to. It gives them a list in the order they come, and we'll try to go from there.
I've never done this before. It's kind of a little bit awkward, but you'll mediate everything, eh, Joe?
Yep, I'll take care of all the end of it. All we got to do is answer questions, and hopefully get some questions. Everybody come on here and ask a question. That's what this is all about. If you need to know something.
How's your weather down there, Joe?
It's been we had a real cold snap like you did in November, or you had it actually in late October. I was down to around 0 here in November, but it's warmed back up, and we had a pretty mild winter, really. It's been probably 4 or 5 degrees above average on the norm. I'm hoping that it continues to be that way and don't get cold in the spring when I'm getting things starting, but, we're all subject to weather.
Yeah, after that cold start we had in October, November, it's kind of been like an average winter here with nice snowfall, and we actually had like a 4-degree day, like 4 degrees Celsius day today, which is kind of nice. A little bit of reprieve. We're calving cows right now. We have what do we have? 400 calves on the ground, another 300 to go or so. But it's nice to have this mild stretch right in January because it sure takes a piece out of winter.
Okay, Vince is up. I'm going to try to unmute you. It didn't. Can you unmute yourself, Vince? It didn't let me unmute you for whatever reason. Nope, I heard you first there. There you go.
Are we good now?
Yeah, good.
Hey, Ian, it's nice to meet you. Hey, 2 quick questions. The first question is, what do you typically treat with in the spring for Varroa?
In the spring? Yeah, I treat with Apivar in the spring, an Amatraz product, primarily.
Okay. Yeah, I did that this early or late summer, early fall. Seemed to work out really good. Then I fogged also.
Yeah.
Second question. This is kind of for you and Joe, actually. Ian, I noticed in a bunch of your videos, or some of your videos, you're sweeping all your dead bees out. Knock on wood, my bees are doing really good right now. Obviously, I'm just east of Chicago. I'll give you an idea where I'm at, northern Illinois, and we've got snow and weather, but I don't have a lot of dead bees this year. On the landing board in the snow, knock on wood, they're all doing really well. They've got their dry sugar in there. They're all doing good, but I don't have a whole lot of dead bees like I had years past. Can that happen? Is that typical, or? You know what I mean?
I always figure that a good healthy hive is going to drop a good healthy amount of bees through winter. But you're saying that your cluster is adequate?
Yeah, they're really. Matter of fact, I checked them the other day to check their sugar, and they're all clustered. They're all good. But I got bees out in the snow here and there, but not like last year. I had tons of them on the landing board, or on the ground. But this year, I don't got hardly any.
It's pretty cool right now, or warm, or what's your temperature? What's your weather?
Right now it's about 30. It's been about 30 the last week or so. We've actually had a really mild January compared to normal. Normal Januaries aren't this mild. It's been pretty nice. We've been really lucky. So
maybe that's might be what you're seeing. Maybe the bees, maybe the ones that you're seeing last year that are falling closer to the hive, maybe. Because it's colder, maybe they're flying further away. You're just not recognizing the same type of attrition.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think
of. Yeah, last year we had a really bad. We had like 30 below here last year, at the end of January. It was a really bad winter last year, and I had a lot of dead bees. But this year, and I never thought about that. They could be just flying farther away and dropping.
That's all I can think of. In the shed, like the bees, when they leave the hive, they have nowhere to go but the floor, right? So I find them all there and I sweep them up. And, I used to keep track of the amount of dead bees I swept. used to keep track by the barrels year after year, wrote it down, try to correlate it to some kind of metric, right? You know, I'm going to sweep this many dead bees this winter because it's going to mean this. And I sweep this many dead bees that winter, it meant that, but I could not make any heads or tails. It didn't matter the amount of dead bees swept off the floor. It didn't correspond to the colony condition, or it didn't correspond to, how well they wintered or anything. So there's a lot of variables going on inside these colonies, which I think we don't quite have a total grasp on what's going on. So there's, it just leaves us unknown. So whether or not you're seeing bees in front of your colonies or deads, I don't know if it really means anything.
All right, yeah, I just kind of curious. I just kind of find it odd. I'm not seeing as many as I've seen in the past. That's all.
I'd mark that up as positive.
There you go. I would too.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Nobody else got any questions? I had a customer actually call me today, Ian, that I'd sold some queens to last fall, and actually it was 2 carnelian queens, and they're good hives. He hadn't been down in them to see how big they was, but he indicated to me there's a lot of bees. Side by side, one of them is dropping no bees, and the other one's dropping about 150 a day. I told him if they had plenty of bees in it, that I probably wouldn't worry about it. What do you think on that?
Kind of like the same question as before from Vince. There's a lot going on. You run into colonies that maybe are sick with nosema, or, before when you used to run into tracheal mite problems, you would see piles of dead bees in front of your colonies through the winter. They die, they just kind of stumble out the front door into the front entrance. And those aren't good. It's not good to see colonies like that. But as far as the natural die off through the winter, it's hard to tell what's going on.
Okay, we got another question here. This is from my buddy in Australia. Chris, you're up. You may have to I tried to unmute and he won't let me. There you go.
Yeah. How's it going, Joe? How's it going, Ian?
Pretty good.
You might have to interpret for me, Joe.
Okay.
What type of high temperatures are you dealing with there, Ian, in summer?
Your high temperatures in summer, Ian, what do they get to up there in Canada, where you're at?
So it's pretty variable here in the middle of Canada. We're in Manitoba, so we're right in the middle. We pretty much get the extremes on both ends. Like, we have that cold Arctic air come down through the winter, and we see minus 40s. Last year, we almost, minus 45 wind chills up to minus 50s. And then the exact opposite happens through the summer. We have this humid air come up from Florida, down from you guys, and it comes the heat. So we get like plus 30s, plus 35s with humidity. So it just gets terribly hot. So we kind of have a mix of everything. It's not dry heat though. Well, we have dry cold, but through the summer it's more so humid. It's humid as hell.
Thanks for that, Ian.
You got any more questions, Chris?
No, I was just wondering what his highs he's dealing with, because he's got the extremes at both ends. I've got extreme at one end, and that's it.
Yeah, tell him what your extreme is, but he's like less than 10% humidity, Chris is.
Yeah. Oh, what we get to yesterday, it went off this scale, so I can't read it. It was 52 Celsius, so it's 124 up or something. We lost chickens and ducks yesterday, died in the heat. Yeah.
How's your fire situation down there?
Here it's all right at the moment, but down south it's not good again. But yeah, we had a little bit of a stress for a while there, for about 8 weeks.
Yeah, Chris is a pretty good buddy. It burned within a half a kilometer to his, and that day there was so much smoke in his yard that all these bees come out of the boxes and was in the air. They was getting ready to leave. In fact, he had a neighbor that his bees did leave, but he was lucky. It was towards the evening, and it got dark, and the bees all went back in. The next day, the smoke cleared, so they all stayed. Okay, next question. Andrew, you're up. Okay, you're up, Andrew.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming on, Ian. Joe, thank you. I noticed on your videos, Ian, you talk a lot about your queen rearing. How do you go about it? Like, I'm kind of new to beekeeping, so how did you start and what attributes did you look for in your hives, and how did you kind of go about that?
Your audio kind of went away. I think your question was how you start your queen rearing.
Yeah, like he puts a lot of, or Ian puts a lot of effort into his queen rearing. A lot of his videos. And, like, what specifically are you looking for, and how do you kind of start that? Sorry if this is bad.
Oh yeah, your audio is real good then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so your question is towards queen rearing, and basically you're looking for my approach, like my technique. My
like
approach.
You raise your own queens. What exactly are you looking for in your hives? How do you go about determining?
What are you looking for picking a queen to breed out of? I think is the question he's asked.
Essentially, yes.
Oh, yeah. So that's interesting. That's one of the reasons why I started to develop my queen rearing program, is just because I'm going to be very careful. I'm not going to slag any commercial queen breeders, because these guys do a fantastic job of producing queens. They run operations that completely dwarf what I'm doing. So I'm not switching out from buying queens in because I don't feel that I'm getting the quality, because these guys are raising top quality queens. One of the reasons why I've adopted this queen rearing program is more so because I'm just trying to gain control within my operation. I was having trouble with, we order these queens, we pre-order this time of year. We're trying to predict how many queens we're going to need throughout the summer. And we have these dates that they're going to arrive, and we're stuck to schedules. And by the time the queens were coming, it didn't match up necessarily with my colony condition and the weather that was happening around the area. So it just put me in a situation where I'm always fighting with the schedules, and always fighting with weather, and always fighting with workload. So what I did is I completely switched away from buying in queens, and I adopted a queen rearing program. So my own queen rearing program. And I did that just so it allows me more flexibility to be able to manage my spring stock, and then it allowed me to kind of complement the bees as they developed by producing the queens. So that's what I'm doing. And one of the advantages of the whole system is the queen breeding. And I found after 2 or 3 years, 4 years, as I started selecting for my my own traits and characteristics and everything that I'm doing here, that I started seeing these traits being expressed within my own apiary, right? So, I used to buy my queens from California and Hawaii and Chile, and New Zealand, and bring these queens in, and I'm trying to get them to,
adapt your climate
in Manitoba. And it is working, but it's not working the same way as my queens I'm adapting here, because every year I'm selecting the bees that are well adapted to my climate and are being selected specifically for the conditions that are being expressed here, and I'm breeding for that. I'm also breeding queens that are adapt to my own management quirks and styles. Like I run single boxes. I run my queens under excluders. I'm pulling off canola honey. I'm feeding them sugar. I'm putting them into a shed and keeping them confined for 5 months. I feed them supplement and sugar whenever they need it. All these factors are coming together, and I'm selecting the brilliance of my stock from that, and I'm propagating that. And I'm just seeing, my hives are. I'm also selecting for sustainability. I'm selecting for hives that you put a queen in the colony, and not necessarily that queen's going to stay there for 4 years, but I want those colonies to sustain themselves, for 3 or 4 years before I have to deal with them. And I'm finding as the further I go into this, I'm finding colonies that, hold together longer. I'm finding colonies that are not as swarming. They're putting more attention towards queen replacement instead of swarming. I'm finding gentler stock. I'm starting to find hives that are, really tuned into, we have these spring flows that come through. I throw some protein on there, and they're just pretty hot on that. All those characteristics are coming together, and that's probably the biggest advantage of the whole system that I didn't really anticipate, is just the breeding effort that's going on here and how that's been translating into, just my own local stock. You always hear about that, right? Breed your own bees, breed your own local stock, and all this stuff, but you don't really appreciate it until you actually see it transform into your operation. So that's a long rambling rant on what I'm doing here, but I'm not going to switch back to importing queens. At the same time, I'll say that I'm breeding these queens and they're doing really well. Like, I walked through the shed here today, and yeah, I got boxes of bees all through that shed, and they're sitting in there content, and they just look beautiful. But if I tried selling one of those queens, like if I sold one to Joe here, and he puts one in his colony, there's chances that that colony is going to flop, because the conditions Joe has down there is a lot different than I have up here. And I'm breeding these queens very specific to my management practice, very specific to my conditions around. So they do very well here. For these big commercial queen breeders, they're doing an excellent job, because what they're doing is they're finding all these generalized characteristics that beekeepers like. They're broody, they produce, they can transport them really well, those characteristics that generally hit all the beekeepers right across the country. So they do very well. But to really tap into the actual conditions in your area and your own management quirks, you got to take it one step further in making your own queens.
That answer your question, Andrew?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Are you queen rearing yourself?
I think he's asking you, Andrew. You queen doing any?
I'm sorry, I thought I was muted. No, I'm kind of getting into it. So, all those videos you put out, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
It's intimidating to start. I was intimidated to start the whole process, but it's really, it's not that complicated. As long as you understand honeybee biology and you understand their behavior, all you got to do is just throw a bunch of young bees into a box. You got to figure out how to graft. I don't know. I can't graft for this shit. I get Carrie to do all the work for me. So I got the advantage. I can hire that out, right? So I always figure, like, I'm good with a hammer. Carrie's really good with the fine details in this, the grafting tool. So I set up the program, and you just fill a box full of young bees. You give them some, queen cells, queen cups, larvae in there. Develop those out, and you just toss them in a nukes. It's pretty much all there is to it.
I'm gonna. Carrie uses a Chinese grafting tool, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. She likes that. I guess she can get into the cell easy. She likes to. My breeders, I feed my breeders up really lush, so then the bees they provide lots of jelly underneath those young larvae. And then she takes a tool and she can really get down there and kind of scoop that puddle of royal jelly with the larvae and kind of floats them into the queen cup. So that's what she does.
Yeah. You send me your address sometime, Ian, and I'll send you up some Chinese tools that I modify. She'll love them.
Oh, sure.
She will love them. Okay, we'll move on. Next question is from Ryan. Ryan, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I just want to thank Ian for his help. My queen operation, my yard was a mess until I started following Ian. I really don't have much questions for you because I follow you so closely, But
I'm sure. Go ahead.
It's really turned into a nice side job for me. And it's all thanks to Ian. As far as Vince's question going, I'm in the same climate as he is, and it's been a really wet winter for us. That's why he's not seeing the dead bees. When it's real cold out and we have a real cold winter, the hives get real dry inside and the bees fly out for moisture, and that's the reason he's not seeing it.
Okay.
hives I have that are packed in foam that have the syrup feeders on them right now, you don't see any dead bees in those.
Okay. I didn't know that, so I learned something.
Yeah,
That's what this is all about. Okay.
that's about it.
Okay. Lower hand and let me see here. Okay, next, let me see. You trying to get things done here. I think I might have shut somebody off there. Modo, you're up.
Yeah, Joe,
Yes, sir.
you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is Bob in Paducah.
Okay.
Bob in Paducah. I came down there and saw you this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, when I think about coming down there, I don't think about your bees. I think about them ribs.
Yeah, they're pretty good ribs here.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask Ian, and you might be able to help too. I was checking into using the bucket feeders. What can you tell me about them? Negatives or?
What do you use right now for feeding your bees?
What do I use now? I use I have a variety of things. I use some of them are the the round feeders. You know
Yeah.
I'm blind, but you know what I'm talking about.
Like open feeding?
Well, I do open feed, but in the spring I use high top feeders.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I primarily use hive top, like the pail feeder on top. I find it really useful. It's a really easy way to feed bees. I don't use I know a lot of guys use frame feeders and such, especially migratory guys, frame feeders, but it just takes too much space up in my colonies, and I need all 10 frames within my boxes.
Yeah, I don't like the frame feeders either.
No, and it adds a little, if you're feeding them, and maybe it adds humidity, that unwanted humidity within the hive. I don't know, and but so I don't use frame feeders. I use pail feeders and I use open feeding. So I use like a combination of the two, just depending on what type of conditions are out and what I'm trying to do at the time. The pail feeders, I hate them. I hate pail feeders with passion, but they're probably one of the more useful feeding options that I have. I try to open feed as much as I can because I feel it's just a little more natural for the bees. They go out, they collect the syrup, they bring it back. But you got to be careful that when you do that you don't feed your neighbors, right? Because you don't want your neighbors coming in, taking your syrup. It's very costly. You don't want their bees coming in because they might be full of disease, or you just want to stay away from that situation. So any place where I have neighbors, I'm primarily feeding with pails. And there's situations through the spring, like I was saying earlier, sometimes it'll be like a cold spring, or we'll get these prolonged periods of cold weather come through. The bee can't access these open feeders, so these pail feeders become really useful because you can fill them up and you can take them out to the yard, put them on top of the colony, and they'll access that syrup all through this crap weather. So they come in very handy. I'll feed in the fall. I'll use those great big 2.5 gallon hive top feeders, and they're handy because they get a lot of syrup into your colony at one time. So I'll put these pails on top in September when I start to bulk the colonies up. They'll take that down before a week's end. But the only problem with those things is if the bees aren't taking the syrup fast enough, they'll drip. Just a little bit of a leak.
Okay, that was one thing I wanted to know. I mean, how much do they leak? I mean, as long as the bees are consuming it good, they can keep up with it. Otherwise, they're going to just drip.
Yeah, so if they're taking it slowly, it's that daytime, nighttime temperature difference. So the temperature difference in the bucket, it just kind of siphons out the syrup. If the bees are taking it, it doesn't matter a damn. But when they slow down, those big pails become a mess. So what I've done, and especially in the spring, like I used to use these big pails to help feed my springtime colonies in the spring. through colder weather, and it just wasn't working because I wanted to feed small amounts of syrup, and the bees are taking it slow naturally through the spring. So I was getting all this drip and waste, and I was feeding ants. You know, it wasn't working. So what I did is I bought these little 1 gallon pails, and they're a little bit cumbersome, but they're extremely handy because the pails are smaller, so you don't have that same daytime nighttime temperature difference. You know, that's siphon out the syrup. It doesn't happen. Like the syrup won't leak out of those little pails. So I'll have the guys go around. We'll fill them up only half full. So a lot of times we're only feeding half a gallon at a time. Throw these little pails on, and the bees come up and access and bring it down, and it's just absolutely brilliant. It's just, you know, now you got all these bloody pails, and you're handling them all the time, and you got to clean them, and it's just pails. I hate pails. If I can open feed, that is my preferred way of feeding. It's open feeding because it's so much easier. But
even in the spring, even in early spring.
Yeah, in the spring, you just feed them small amounts all the time. You know, just if you need syrup into them, you get it into them just like that. The pails are just more work, and but they have a very important place on the farm. Like every spring, I tell Carrie, don't worry, no pails this year. You know, we're going to open feed everything that we can, and it gets cold, and we put the pails out.
Okay. All right. Well, I was looking for other alternatives to feeding, you know, on the hot top feeders. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks a lot.
Okay. I got a follow-up question on the end. Do you know what size screen's in the bottom of them?
Oh, no, I don't. Not offhand. It is listed on BeeMade, the BeeMade store, like www.beemade.com. You go to the store, and they sell the stainless steel mesh,
right?
Screen mesh, and they have the size on there. They have they have it on there, but I can't tell you offhand.
Okay, one other question I've got. Your bees you're running, what's the general stock? Are they Carniolians up there, or what are they out of?
They're Carniolian. I've always bought primarily I buy Kona queens, buy Olivera queens, and Saskatraz, and I'm always buying the dark queens. So everything's a little bit of a mix. There's my Italian, all that stuff in there. But when I started queen breeding, or rearing my own queens, I started off some really good Kona stock, some dark queens that are really hygienic, and those queens have just turned into something brilliant here. So I'm very happy with that. I've noticed that the lighter colored queens, I used to have Italians come in every once in a while, so I'd get this mix of dark and yellow queen coming all the time through the supersedures and swarms and such. But now everything is jet black. If not, I'm colorblind, but Carrie says there's like red stripes on them sometimes. So
yeah. Well, the Saskatraz, I know back when they first come out, they was pretty good bees, but I've had a little trouble out of Oliveris on the Saskatraz. Have you bought any from out there lately, or you've been breeding your own, so you've not bought any for a long time?
No, I haven't bought some in for the last 2 years or so, but I've been buying in before that. And I've been importing the program from Albert Robertson up here in Saskatchewan. So I've been bringing some of his stock in from that. So, you know, it is what it is, I guess. These guys are trying to, especially Albert, he's trying to, bring tolerance in, just in that natural sense. So he's got that survivorship program going up. He's way up north here in Saskatchewan, so he's got places where it's secluded from everybody. So he's running that program, and he's finding some really interesting characteristics. But some of those characteristics also come with disadvantages, right? So he's been cooperating with Ray Oliveras down in California, and he's been mixing in some of his vigor and his broodiness and winter, he's trying to bring certain characteristics that Ray likes into Robert's stock. And everything that I bought from them has been absolutely brilliant. Like they winter well. Like I'm wintering boxes of bees, and they're coming out of winter as a box of bees heavy. So I'm not feeding them very much in the spring. They work when it's cold. I mean, I'm walking through the yard and thinking, okay, guys, you should maybe slow down a bit because this is a little risky. But they're working their ass off. They they're bringing in the yields. Swarming, Carniolan type is more apt to swarm, I guess, in some ways. So they're like every other. So we had to watch for the swarming part, and gentle. Like, there's one thing I've noticed with the progression of their breeding program is their queens have got extremely easy to work with. So I like that about them too.
Now, are you
I
buying?
have nothing but good things to say about that breeding program.
Yeah, but are you buying yours straight from Ray? Most of them.
I'll buy both. I buy them through Beemade. Beemade gets them through Albert, and then Beemade gets them through Oliveras also.
Okay, yeah. Totally different because all the queen, we're getting queens. It's bred out in California, and we're getting that. We're not getting a pure breed like you would be getting from Ray up there. That's what I was wondering. But unfortunately, the borders are closed now. We can't bring breeds back and forth across.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So that's going to put a little bit of a. I haven't talked to the guys about that issue, but I imagine that's going to put a little bit of kink in their whole breeding program.
Well,
there's also breeders in Ontario that aren't too pleased with that, but surely, I mean, it's all politics. I think this is all bloody politics, so it's going to settle itself out soon enough.
Yeah, maybe Ray can collect drone semen or something and send Oliveras drone semen. That's enough of that.
They might be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on. Craig, you're up.
Hey, this is Craig.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any way to determine? So I have good hives going into fall, winter. I lose a lot more bees than I think I should when changing over from summer bees to winter bees. So I'll go from 8, 9, 10 frame broods in the summer. And then when winter gets here, I'll look, and all of a sudden I'm down to like 5 frames of brood or 5 frames of bees in the winter. Is that normal? Is that about right? Or is there a better way to judge? Is there a ratio? I don't know. So I'm asking.
When would you think your what do you call it, that
summer die off,
or that autumn inflection that happens within your fall colony? When do you think that the colony switches into that winter mode?
I'm in the middle of Kansas, and so I would say first of November, end of October, 1st of November, depending on weather.
So they go completely flightless at that time?
Yes. And I lose brood starting at the middle to end of October as a rule. I've had warm winters here lately where I'll still have a little bit of brood going on in the 1st of November. I just don't know that. I guess where I'm going with this is, could I be doing something better in September and early October to have bigger winter nests in November? Does that make sense? Sorry, I've been up a long time. I'm sitting out in the pasture watching cows birth. So.
Well, it's hard for me to comment on because I'm not familiar with your area. But what I can do is I'll provide you a little bit of insight of what I see up here.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. So up in Manitoba, like, we have extremely very well defined seasons. We have summer, we have fall, we have winter, we have spring. And our bees recognize those seasons, and it's almost like the season whips them to that period. So we're leaving summer and we're approaching into fall. It's those summertime fields are out in bloom, all this nectar's coming in. Now, all of a sudden, we're seeing less of that, and the bees are starting to hunt a little bit. And it seems like they move themselves into fall. Like they're like, okay, the summer's done. We're moving. We're heading to winter now, guys. So they start developing right about that time. They start developing out their winter nest. It seems like they lay it out. They put all these resources in there, and they lay that winter nest out, and they extend that as far as they can into September, just depending on the amount of available nutrition out there. So I'll have my I call it my winter nest. Like if we want to stage things, I have my winter nest set up middle of August and hatched out pretty much beginning of September, middle of September. And then she drifts to practically no brood whatsoever until after Christmas. So the bees are in the way, or they've set themselves up. Here's that winter nest. So I can go in there middle of August or the end of August, and I can count brood frames. Okay, I go through here, I can count 5 brood frames. This is going to be a terrific looking winter nest. I go through the next one, there's only 2. So, okay, that's going to be a little bit smaller. So I can pretty much define exactly what that winter nest is going to look like just by the way it's setting itself up as it goes into fall. And I don't know if I'm not sure if your hives would be able to set themselves up in such a, cut and dry, this is summer, this is fall, preparing for winter. These are our winter bees. I'm not sure if if yours is more like a gradual goes until, I don't know. You know
Seems
what I mean?
more
The other
gradual.
thing is, the other thing is disease control. Like we go into fall, and I'm doing my mite washes, and I'm finding, anything that's over 2.5% mite counts in my washes, I'm going in there with a treatment. In the fall, typically the last few years, I've been getting away without doing a fall treatment because the levels are really low. I've just been mopping up my mites later on in fall with oxalic. But those yards are maybe bordering a neighbor that maybe aren't managing mites like they should, and is coming into my apiary. So I had a yard that was 5%. I'm going in there with treatment to get those mites knocked off, because if there's any mites that are involved with the setup of that winter nest, and if there's any mites in that winter nest going into winter, you're just going to have, it's going to be a disaster. Up here, we can't winter bees with any type of mites on them.
Sure.
So that's another factor we'll have to consider.
I have a very aggressive mite treatment program. We do alcohol washes 3 times a year. I do oxalic or the formic strips a couple of times a year when brood frames are low, and then we do oxalic acid when there's no brood in the boxes. But I'm just trying to judge, how do I go from such big, healthy hives in late summer to these, what scares me, these small boxes with winter bees? And I don't know if I'm making any sense. I've been watching cows birth for a while, so.
So here, like I was saying, as that winter nest of mine sets up middle of August going into September, there's a period of time that these bees, this is very debatable. There's a lot of discussion about this, but it seems, or the way I look at it anyways, is these bees, how am I going to put this? I actually don't see a difference between a summer bee and a winter bee, okay? And the reason I say that, and the reason I say that is because the way I see it, these bees are bees, and they do what bees do, and they emerge, they raise new bees, they go off and forage and such. It's just, and I figured the whole winter nest setup is purely a situation. And I figure that the bees, they emerge, that last round of brood that I'm seeing, that I'm talking about, I'm calling it winter brood, those bees emerge, and they don't have any bees to care for themselves ahead of them. So they're able to hold all these proteins and fats on their bodies. And in a sense, they're the winter bees, right? And then comes later on fall, as the bees stop flying, there's we call it the autumn inflection, or I do it anyway, the autumn inflection, where you have those bees, those short-lived bees all of a sudden start their lifespan expands, right? It just gets longer.
Yeah.
And so I figured that there is no difference between winter and summer bees. And I figure it's just a situation that the hives are put in to where the bees themselves that are remaining, are just set up to be able to prolong themselves through the winter period. And I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but that's just the way I see it. So in the fall, like later, I'll start protein feeding right after my honey boxes are taken off. And I'll feed protein to complement that pollen coming in, because that pollen comes in, the bees are using it to develop out that nest to build to winter. That's my winter nest. And I got to make sure that those bees in that are being developed in that winter nest are well nourished. We're running out of resource up here for pollen. We're losing tree rows and bushes and sloughs and everything. So as long as I have a little bit of pollen coming in, I'm giving him protein. So I'm feeding him that protein right after the boxes are off. I'm targeting that winter nest that's being developed. So this is very intentional. I'm feeding, 2 or 3, 4 pounds of protein to that winter nest as being developed in the middle of August. So it's being used to develop those bees. Those bees emerge. There's still protein I have available so they can gorge on that protein, and then I stop. Because after that, the bees naturally just stop rearing brood, and there's nothing left to feed. So I don't want to feed too late into the fall and bung up all these bees with full guts. So the only piece of advice I would be able to provide you is if you could target that point of time where you figure that that nest is being developed, that winter nest, which you would call winter bees. If you can find that point of time and just lay the protein to them, hopefully there's still natural stuff coming in so you can complement the pollen, but feed them and try to develop that winter nest.
And I think you might have just hit the nail on the head. I am in row crop city out here. We do nothing but corn or beans, corn and beans, 2 in 1, 2 years of beans, 1 year of corn. But I think that I may have been negligent in providing protein in the fall. I do the open, I feed syrup, but yeah, quite noted.
Do you have small hive beetle? Craig, do you have small hive beetle in your part of the country?
No, none.
Okay, that's an advantage for you then.
I saw 2 hive beetles this year. I run 125 hives right now, looking to bump up, but yeah, 2 hive beetles. So,
see, I run the advantage here. I don't have small hive beetle, and I talk to a lot of American friends down there who do have small hive beetle. And a lot of what I do up here, a lot of the way I manage my bees, harvest my honey, clear the bees from my boxes, store in my feed my hives. A lot of what I do doesn't directly translate into a lot of what happens down in the U.S. So I have to be careful, or just, anybody who's listening to me you got to understand that there's certain conditions you got to watch. Small hive beetle is one of those, and I've heard terrible stories about it. And we don't want them up here because it'll change our management program. But if you can, supplement that colony, if you can supplement that full-time colony, if you can find that period of time when that winter nest is being developed and feed them during that point of time, focus feed on that. And also, I hear what you're saying about row crops, because you get nothing from row crops. So if you could find a piece of paradise somewhere within your area just to relocate your hives to get that natural pollen, because I'm a big believer in bees need pollen. It doesn't matter how much attention we put towards, supplemental feeding. We make ourselves feel good sometimes, I think. Bees need that pollen, and without that pollen, they're not going to do a damn. So if you have that pollen, then you can capitalize on it by bulking with that protein, that supplement protein.
That help you, Craig?
I'm going to look closer at that. Thank you very much for your time.
I've noticed here, Ian, that I've got outyards, and I don't have as many bees in the outyard because most of my bees here at the house, you don't take care of an outyard like you take care of bees close. It just don't happen. It just doesn't happen. But the outyard bees, there's less of them there. They're all on natural forage, and I don't have to feed them. And they do 10 times as good as where I've got a lot of bees. So the supplement, I feed them all they can eat, protein and sucrose, and it doesn't make up the difference. They've got to have the natural. I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think we as beekeepers just like to do things that feel good. We're feel-good operators. I am too. You put a patty on a hive, and that, there's a lot of sugar in there, so those bees eat it, and it looks, all right, these bees are eating that patty. It makes you feel good. But whether or not it's actually translating down in that brood nest, I don't know. So we have to try to make sure what we do, that we, kind of provide some kind of metric to figure out if it's actually doing something. Right, so we have our hives out in an area that doesn't have any forage or anything like that. We're trying to feed them. They're not going to do a damn anyways because they don't have that natural stuff coming in. You can't complement it. I was talking to a beekeeper not too far away from here, and he doesn't feed his hives because he tells me he has all this natural stuff coming in. I mean, that's what bees do. They bring in pollen, they feed on it, they build bees on that. It's just, I feel supplements really important, especially now when we're losing all that diversity out there. And I think we just need to provide a little bit of balance to the diet of our honeybee. And by doing that, provide them that supplement. But it can't be done without the pollen.
Yeah, of course, I feed a lot of dry pollen substitute because of the small hive beetles. Less of an issue. And I've caught a lot of flack about feeding. I feed pollen 365 days a year because I get some warm weather sometime and they'll fly. He said, you'll get them brooding up. I have seen no evidence that feeding them pollen tells them when to turn on. I think it's all about the amount of daylight in the day, and they do their own thing. It don't matter whether they got it or they ain't got it. Now, if they ain't got it, they can't make babies. But as far as feeding them protein, well, you've tried it last year. You tried really throwing the protein to them, trying to build them nest up, and they didn't build up for you. So they just
because they didn't have any. Yeah, that was later on in the summer. It was a really hard, or 2 years ago. It was a really hot summer, and it had pretty much killed the countryside. I had no pollen coming in whatsoever. Like after August 1st, I had no nutrition whatsoever. They dropped the axe. They built that last round of brood, built out that winter nest, and it didn't matter how much I fed them supplement. I could not get those bees to take those eggs the queen laid to take them further into development. They just would not do it. But they were taking that supplement and they're consuming it. And I think they were putting it on as body fats. And I think they're still using it. See, all this, this is all unknown. I'm just kind of speculating what was going on. But there's a lot of things going on. I agree. There's a lot of things going on. We have absolutely no idea what's happening. And we just kind of try to figure things out, right, and do the best we can.
Well, just from my experience, I'm thinking that the amount of protein and food you give them, if there's not natural coming in, doesn't relate to the amount of brood you get. Now, it may make the hive healthier. I'm sure it does. Keeps them from starving to death. But as far as relating to the size of a brood nest, if there's nothing coming in, they just shut down. They basically do their own thing.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in nutrition. Like with our cattle farm, we have our animals on a TMR diet, and we feed them corn silage. So we got the energy there, and we have mature cows. We're feeding them straw to slow down the digestion, and we're feeding them DGGs for protein, and we've got vitamins and minerals in theirs. And we have like 7 different rations going on with different animal types. We've got bulls going on with a little higher energy, some bulk, and the heifers a little bit less. We're pinpointing the diet between all the animals, and we're seeing tremendous results from that. Like we have reproduction through our animals that are just absolutely brilliant, and we're having production like their animals are gaining weight. Their cattle, they're healthy. They're not, a healthy animal. I always figure is a well-doing animal. It's not going to get sick as bad. Bees are the same thing, right? So you keep your bees well conditioned. I feel that they won't fall to circumstances of disease and pesticides and beekeeper applied treatments as they would if they're malnourished.
Daniel, you're up.
Hey, Ian, I've got a question about Varroa thresholds. when I first started 8 years ago, if I remember correctly, I think the threshold when you checked for Varroa in the colony was 9. It could have been higher. I think it may have been higher, but right around the number. And now it seems to be if you're only getting a couple. And I've even heard of some larger sideliners / commercial treating when they see one mite in a shake. So you've kind of seen, I think, a broad range of what's been happening for a long time. And are you worried that our thresholds are going down and down and down, and the viruses are, kind of getting worse, and there's more viruses? What are your thoughts on that, or plans? Like, are you worried that it's just going to get, so bad?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, because when I first got into the business and I first got serious about keeping bees, I remember that fall time threshold was 5%, and my spring threshold, I think that time was 1.5%, something like that, 1% in the spring. Now, my fall time threshold is 2.5%, if not lower than that, and my spring threshold is 0. Like I do not want to see a single mite in my hives in the spring, and that threshold is coming down. I remember I was talking to a researcher from the University of Manitoba here in the entomology department, and he was saying that before all this viral influence come, we could winter our bees on 10% mite loads. And he said, not predictably, but we could still get some hives through at that mite level. Now you can't get, for my operation, you run into a 5% mite load. I'm thinking, holy shit, this is going to be a wipeout, right? And it's just that. It's exactly that. It's the viral infection within the mites exposing it to the bees, and it's just overwhelming our stock. So yeah, basically, I won't say this very often, but we have one advantage of winter up here, and that is it shuts our hives down completely for almost half a year, right? So they're brooding very little. So we can get away with treatments like I treat in the spring, and for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been getting away without having to do a fall treatment, except for a late season oxalic acid before I put them inside. So I've been throwing only 1 treatment or 2 treatments at these guys. I know a lot of you guys down in the States, especially California, that they're 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Every time they're turning around, they're having to put another treatment down because they have to keep those mite levels down. Because if they don't, it's the goddamn virus infection comes in and just completely screws everything up. And it's something that I think sometimes you'll hear, or I'll run into a hive that is looking fantastic, and I do a wash and there's a lot of mites in there. Another hive is crashing, and you're like, what's the difference between the two? And maybe a dirty mite, I don't know if there's such a thing, but a mite that's just ridden full of viral infection. I think that is going to be a bigger issue as we go down the pipe, especially when our treatment options start to decrease as Amitraz becomes less effective.
I agree with that 100%. Back in 2014, we didn't have much viral part of it, and you could go into a pretty good load of mites. And we got to thank the governments. I mean, we brought all these bees from New Zealand that had viruses but didn't have mites, and by gosh, we give them the host that carried everywhere.
Yeah, and just our nature as beekeepers, we move our bees around, right? So we're moving infection from one side to the other side very fluidly. And that doesn't help things either, right? When you can isolate things, it's a lot easier for the spread of infection. But yeah, there's one thing I found that I've been doing all these silly speaking things right across the country, but I've been talking to a lot of beekeepers. And I found, I talk to guys that just use a chemical treatment and they're having trouble with mites. And then I talk to other guys that don't want to use a chemical treatment and they're using alternative treatments and they're battling with mites all the time. But the guys I talk to that seem to use the Amitraz or the Apivar, like we use Apivar, the guys using that Apivar and then using a combination later on in the year with oxalic acid, like the guys are being able to control their mites. So there's something I don't know what it is. And it's just something I've noticed within my own operation here. As soon as I started, like I use Apivar in the spring, as soon as I started mopping up those hives late season with oxalic acid, I'm shaking, you know, I'm only finding mites in my colonies from the drift coming in from a neighbor that doesn't treat his bees properly.
Yeah.
So there's something going on there. We got to pay attention to this kind of, all these kind of cause and effects. Because we're going to need a little bit of help as we go forward here, I'm pretty sure.
We sure are. Okay. Ernest, you're up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just wondered if you ever get any black wing virus in your raising your queens, and if so, what do you do about it?
Yeah, so black cell queen virus. Our diagnostic lab here in Winnipeg does a full spectrum disease analysis. So we can send a couple of bees in there, or we send a box full of bees in there, and they take them and they can tell us deformed wing virus, black cell queen virus, Israeli paralysis or something, sackbrood virus. I forget the other one, but yeah, I am finding levels of black cell queen virus in those samples I'm sending away. I have yet to find a black cell queen virus express itself in my builders though, and that's a good thing. And I don't know why I'm not seeing it yet, but it's there. There's a small background infection of it, and I just hope it doesn't express itself. A few things, I talked to some guys, and I'm not very well experienced with managing black cell queen virus, but I talked to a few guys, and they say, well, if you see black cell queen virus set itself up with one of your builders, get the builder out of production. It's just as simple as that, because you're not going to fix the problem. So remove the infection. That's one thing. And another interesting thing that I hear guys talking about is before they either before they set up the builder by treating the colonies, or treating the builder itself before they actually start dropping grafts in there, they'll treat their hives with oxytetracycline or something, some kind of treatment like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the hell the link would be, because this is a bacterial treatment, and it's relieving the viral infection. And so some of the thought behind that is, which still doesn't make any sense to me anyway, is that they're saying that, well, it relieves the nosema infection. Well, nosema is not a bacterial infection either. Well, oxytetracycline won't take care of it, I mean. So, or no, fumagillin. I'm saying I'm meaning fumagillin. Yeah, they pre-treat their hives with fumagillin to control the nosema infection. For some reason, by controlling that nosema infection, it's directly relating to low expression of black cell queen virus. So that's just what I'm hearing.
I've had a lot of discussion with some pretty good sized queen breeders on that. Oxytetracycline, which is terramycin, if you get it in a builder, you can treat like that. I mean, the dose for EFB is 2 treatments, but you can treat one day. You can absolutely graft back in that the next day. They'll be fine. And I've asked the same question. It's a viral infection, and antibiotics does not cure virus. They're thinking that the black queen cell virus is feeding on a gut bacteria, and you're killing the bacteria. Therefore, they don't have anything to feed on, and they die. That's not been proven yet, but that's the theory behind it.
Yeah, that could very well be too. And then the guys are talking about the fumagillin also, and why is the control of nosema helping with the expression of black cell queen virus? And maybe it's a point of infection type deal, because nosema will pierce the gut lining of that bee gut, right? It'll penetrate and pierce it, and that provides opportunity maybe for that virus to get into that bee, which is more opportunity maybe. So I don't know, you know.
I fight it a lot here. I have to treat my starters. I mean, if I don't, it'll wipe me out. So at some point in the season, I'll get a round where I'll lose, 3 rounds of grass. It takes 3 rounds of grass before you catch it. I mean, they're just the way it is. They're really costly.
Maybe running clean comb helps too. Like one thing I do in my builders is I set them up on. I almost use honeycomb. Like I use I build my builders. I go to a yard, I dedicate a yard, and I shake the bees from that yard into my builder. And my builder is made up with pollen frames I collect from my hives, but also like honey frames. So my equipment I have going on inside my builders are pretty clean. Like my cells I'm building out are pretty white because they're nice looking cells because they don't have all that staining from all that brood comb, right? So that might help too, just lessen the chance of infection by having cleaner equipment going on.
Yeah. I keep my comb rotated out. There's nothing any older than 16 months in this yard, so it's pretty clean comb. And it really doesn't seem to help. Do I believe in clean comb? Yes. Old comb has disease in it. You need to get it out of there. That, in my opinion. That help you, Ernest?
Yeah. I also clean mine up with I use bleach. I soak them in bleach and pull them out and clean them that way. So I think that sanitize them some. So hopefully that'll help.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go here. Mute lower hand. Randall, I don't see your microphone. Is your microphone working? I'll unmute you, but I don't see it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Ian, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing. And I have a question. In the States, we track winter die-off from one year to the next. And I was wondering, in Canada, do you guys track what percentage of your hives across the country die off each winter?
Yeah, it's tracked very closely. It's usually done throughout our provincial governments, through our provincial apiarist, I mean. He'll send out a survey, and he gets pretty favorable response here in Manitoba anyways, on beekeepers just providing some information on our winter losses. The survey, I think, also includes production and stuff like that. But the surveys I notice all the way across our country they seem pretty well, the participation is pretty high on that. Yeah.
You know what the percentage of die-off was for last winter in Canada?
Ooh, I could dig that out. It's variable across the country. Canada, like that, is in the States. Like we are a big country and we're pretty variable from one side to the next. So we have beekeepers in BC, a lot milder winters as compared to beekeepers across the prairies where we have cold winters. And then we get on the other side of the country into Ontario, Quebec, at the eastern side, more wet, a little wetter winters, not as cold, severe winters, more snow and stuff. Just different. What I'm trying to say is just the whole country is set up with different dynamics, different conditions that we have to deal with. So to pinpoint the loss within Canada wouldn't be an accurate representation of what's going on in each region.
Okay. Do you have a feel for what it would be in the province that you're in?
Yeah, it was roughly around that 20 to 25% mark last year.
Okay, well, that's a lot better than the average across the states, because last year our average was 37.7.
That gets pretty high. It also depends. These surveys, when they send them out, they weight them on colony size, like operation size, I believe. And I think that's important because when you talk to, what's important for anybody who wants to make sense of the information, because if you talk to beekeepers who are managing a huge amount of hives, it's going to be a lot different than beekeepers who are managing smaller amount of hives, right? The investment's a lot different. Just the whole operating dynamics are different. And what happens on a commercial scale is to my opinion, is the important part of those stats. Because those are guys making their living. Those are the guys that need the attention for, you know, to help them with the situation. So I wonder that 37% that you said, do you know if that's a commercial loss or like an overall, including hobbies also?
Yeah, I think it was an overall across, you know, all different spectrums.
And then that kind of skews the whole numbers, because, you know, you get a hobby guy that has 4 hives and he loses, you know, 2 hives. That's 50% loss right there. And that's a very small, what do you call it? Like a very small
set group.
as compared to, like, if you have 1,000 hives, you lose 500 hives. You know, it's a big, I feel there's a big difference between that. Yeah. But, you know, and we've got to watch. I believe that some of these numbers are being used by other groups to be able to, you know, 30%, 37% loss. That sounds pretty bad, right? But is, you know, how's that actually shaking out? And then are there other people maybe using that number, this huge problem, to maybe fund their own type of campaign moving forward? You know, you kind of see what I'm trying to say. So just waiting the loss on a single number, I don't think it's a fair assessment of what's going on.
A lot of politics in bees.
There's politics, and we're being, yeah.
We're being used a little bit. I just leave it at that, Ian. A lot of politics.
I won't go down that rabbit hole.
I never dreamed when I got into bees how much politics is in it. It's just crazy. When you get up in commercial, it's just crazy. But we've talked about an hour and 25 minutes. That's pretty long. We give a chance for anybody to ask one last question, or any of my co-hosts want to jump in there and say anything, and then we're going to cut it off here.
Ian, this is Mike. I sure appreciate you coming on tonight with us, guys. It's helped a lot of our friends, you know, with me and other co-hosts on our group too, and enjoy talking with you. And of course, I know your environment's totally different from ours. Down here, I'm in West Tennessee or whatever, Humboldt, but we still learn from each other. And I know you do a lot of talks around or whatever point. I just wish we could get some. I know you're in Canada, we're in the United States. If you had your cattle operation and you lost a 50% of your cattle operation for whatever reason, do you think your government wouldn't try to help you and do something about it? And where bees, they don't care. They don't seem to or won't do anything about it, put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, maybe this is a rabbit hole I might accidentally fall down into now, but I don't think there's enough attention put towards our honeybee business or our honeybee industry. You know, there's a lot of things changing in the countryside. There's a lot of agriculture dynamics changing. There's a lot of progression. And I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because our farm is still, you know, we have to stay in business. We have to adopt these technologies. We have to be able to move forward to stay profitable and solvent. You know, we are a food production that we're feeding everybody else, right? So it's extremely important that we put this attention towards technology and better ways of doing things. But I feel at the same time that all this, like, the agriculture industry has moved forward. And I feel at the same time, beekeepers have been kind of forgotten about. We can kind of left back in the dust. And all this technology moving forward, you know, helping farmers and helping society have that food produced, high quality food, everything's moving forward. I mean, it's negatively affected our honeybee industry. And I feel that there's a responsibility on society, being government, and a responsibility to the agriculture community to recognize this and help us, you know, help us solve these problems we're facing. Like you say, 50% loss or 37% loss of hives. It's not acceptable. We don't have enough tools available right now to be able to handle a lot of the situations going on in our colonies, and we're struggling, right? And a lot of it is directly result from landscapes changing on us. You know, all these pressures business pressures, all these dynamics coming around. We have all this attention over the media. Society is paying attention to us, but they don't seem to do a damn of a difference or thing to make any difference within our apiaries right now to help us move forward. But at the same, you mentioned 50% of, if my cattle herd, 50% of that cattle herd, if we had like 400 cows die, that'd be a pretty bad situation. And comparing that to the bee, to my bee operation, I wouldn't say that. I find a hard time comparing the two that way. We're dealing with bugs in a box, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So we're dealing with a natural thing, and hives naturally die. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So out in nature, you have hives set themselves up and they propagate themselves because they're managing that attrition at all times. I think as beekeepers, if we are seeing situations where we're experiencing 50% loss like that, we have to appreciate that, and maybe we have to manage these apiaries maybe a little bit differently to be able to handle this type of attrition. If this is going to be something, heavy losses move forward, we're going to have to adapt to it. We have to be able to manage that situation. One of the ways I'm doing that is I'm bringing in like my whole queen rearing program. I won't yap about this too long, but my whole queen rearing program I'm developing all focuses around developing out a shit ton of nukes. So, over a third of my apiary size, that's how many nukes I have going in the back corner, just developing, just simmering, just building themselves out. Because I'm going to use those nukes, and I'm going to go through my apiary the next year, and I'm going to go through with an axe, and I'm going to call. I'm not going to call according to if that hive's alive or not. I'm going to call whether or not that hive is performing or not, and I'm going to keep bringing in this refresh. And I think beekeepers need to do a better job in providing that refresh into our apiaries at all times, because we put a queen in, we expect that hive to live for 5 years, but that isn't, that's not realistic. That's something that doesn't naturally happen. we allow it to happen by management as we go along. We just prolong that life. But we're running into a little bit of trouble with disease and exposure and such. We have to do a better job on the other side and just start bringing that refresh in and just continue to refresh our apiaries to help our businesses along and such. And we are doing that, within our cattle herd. We're doing that in the same kind of fashion. We're bringing heifers in every year, and we're selling off the old cow as stock, like into the markets. So We're doing that continually. And we're doing that just to help keep our operation productive. If we have a whole bunch of old cows in there, they're not necessarily going to die on us, but they're not going to produce. Yeah. So they might as well be dead, right? They, push them aside. So what I'm trying to say is, as beekeepers, as we recognize the challenges ahead, and we recognize that we're going to be experiencing more losses, one way we can address that is just naturally bring that continual refresh into our operations. And as soon as I adopted that strategy with my queen rearing program, as soon as I made that shift, as soon as I had that huge battery of nukes back behind me, that I could just, start dropping those young beehives into all those empty spots, then I could start knocking off all those old queens and anything that's poor doing and just refresh it, just like that. I've noticed that the vigor of my entire operation is just completely turned around. Like last year, I'll talk for 2 more minutes and I'll stop my rant. But last year, we run into, my hives went in small. We had a long winter. My hives come out small. Then we experienced a really shitty cold spring. Okay. I took those bees, I fed them. I had this battery of nukes behind me, dropped them into all those non-performing places. I built my colony up, and I had a record honey crop last year, and I'm putting an extra 200 hives into winter here. And I attribute that to queens, and I attribute it to youth. I think beekeeper, and disease control, of course, but beekeepers, what I'm trying to say is we need to help ourselves out a little bit, and we need to be able to bring that youth in. And I think every beekeeper sees it. You have a young queen, they're saying, holy shit, look at that hive, that's a young queen. Well, shit, let's get more young queens in there just to be able to promote the brilliance that we can extract from these guys.
That's good.
So
one other thing, that little girl you got working for you named Carrie,
yes,
you need to give her a raise, dude. She's worked her butt off. In the videos, I'm seeing what all she does. You just stated yourself, she's doing all your grafting. She is a right hand to you. I don't know if you realize it or not to her, but she is your right hand.
Oh, I do. Yeah, she's a backbone around here. She's got a passion for bees. It's kind of nice because I'm a farmer. I'm business minded and everything, and I get going through in middle of summer. The bees are starting robbing, and and it's getting long, and I'm getting tired, and I just start hating bees. I just hate bees. It's okay to say that sometimes, but it's nice because Carrie's there, and she has quite an instinct for this kind of work, and she loves them, and she just helps me, not squish every bee I see as we go in the fall, and just making sure that the colony operation moves itself into a proactive manner to fall instead of just that reactive kind of mentality. So yeah, she raises all my queens. She does, she manages the kids around here. She trains them, and then she's managing the honey house. I'm in the yards all day. She's managing, so she slugs the whole summer out in the honey house, which is pretty tough. So she does deserve a raise.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get in your economics or nothing, but I just say what she does for you. She really looks like she's going to help you. And everybody's got to have somebody like that. If you don't, your business will go downhill real quick. You know what I mean?
That's true. And another aspect about running a good business too, though, is how should I put this? We've got to be careful that we don't set things up. So if a person like Carrie were to leave my farm, built my farm up around her, I built it up. We're raising the number of bees right now is because she's enabling all this work to get done. And if she left all of a sudden, like next year, or she got a better job, and she married somebody and left to BC or something, I can't allow my operation to fall apart. So it's very important that an operator like me can recognize that, and around these people, form the programs, form the processes, and so if your lead guy leaves, you can bring somebody else in to take over that spot. And it's very important that we set ourselves up that way, just so it just manages our risk a little bit. And if that lead guy leaves, everything doesn't fall apart. So that's kind of as I built my program as I go, that's always been in the back of my mind. So as she's contributing towards the farm, I'm trying to build that program around her to make her job easier, but also to allow somebody else to come in if Olsen had to be to continue that job. I can tell you they won't do as good a job of queen rearing as she's doing, and they won't run the honey house like she is right now. So I'll be in quite the deficit, but my farm won't collapse.
Smart business. That's all it is right there.
Yeah.
Ian, I appreciate you. We run almost an hour and 35 minutes here. It's been a real good chat. I appreciate you coming. And like I say, everybody, you can go to Canadian Beekeeper and watch him on the YouTube if you don't, not already subscribers. Hopefully this little chat makes you a little more comfortable about talking to people. I mean, it's kind of a different situation, and get you there. And by all means, email me, send me your address, and I'll send Carrie some grafting tools that I think she'll really enjoy. I appreciate everybody and questions.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation, and I just hope I didn't ramble too much, because sometimes I get rambling, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense. But that's why in my videos I have the edit button, so I can kind of take all those pieces out.
Well, yeah, I have not found a true beekeeper that couldn't talk about bees all day. So nothing new here. So guys, appreciate all you guys watching, and hopefully it's going to warm up here, and we'll be able to actually get some videos out showing some bee work. It's kind of when snow's on the ground, it's cold. It's hard, like Ian. It's hard to make videos that's entertaining and informational. And we'll catch y'all later.
Okay, have a good night.